Andrew Leung's bid for LegCo presidency receives overwhelming support from pro-establishment lawmakers. Theresa May says Brexit process will formally begin by the end of March next year. And in Colombia, a referendum defeat for a peace deal with leftist rebels.
Good evening. The new Legislative Council term has officially begun, and lawmakers from across the political spectrum are scrambling to deploy tactics to secure the most power inside the chamber. Today, the pro and non-establishment sides announced who they would send to fight for the top positions. Winna Wong reports.
With former LegCo President Zhang Yuxing out of the picture, it's time to decide who will replace him. With a majority 40 seats in the legislature, the pro-establishment camp today spent over 2 hours discussing who they would nominate for the top job. The choice was between Andrew Leung from the Business and Professionals Alliance and Michael Tian of the New People's Party. By the end of the meeting, there was a general consensus that Leung would be the chosen one.
I think if you ask, individual parties, who support me. But from this morning's meeting, I have almost all the parties supporting me.
Asked about a British passport he had, Leung told reporters today he had already given it up to fulfill LegCo requirements for its president. On the other hand, Tian had been calling for a primary election to allow pro-establishment lawmakers to choose between himself and Leung through a secret ballot.
So today, I spent a lot of time pushing for a secret ballot system to legitimize this whole thing so that it would actually maybe even give more credibility to Andrew if he would end up getting a lot of votes. But unfortunately, that has not met the approval of the majority of the members present.
Tian said he would withdraw from the race if the pro-establishment side decides to support Leung. Meanwhile, the non-establishment side also held their own meeting today, mainly attended by lawmakers from traditional pro-democracy parties. They decided to nominate superseder James To. He says he has already handed in his nomination. According to the Basic Law, the president of the Legislative Council must be at least 40 years old, a permanent resident of the HKSAR, with no right of abode in any foreign country. He or she must also have resided in Hong Kong for the past 20 years. The deadline for nomination of the LegCo presidency ends on Wednesday. Winna Wong, TVB News.
Both the pro-establishment and non-establishment camps also discussed in their respective meetings today who to field in their bids for chairs of various legislative committees. There are suggestions from each side that the two rival camps should ditch their tit-for-tat seat-grabbing tactics and return to coordination. Adam Xu has more.
The chair and vice chair of a committee are posts that both camps of LegCo would vie for. After the meeting today, the pro-establishment camp has agreed to let Starry Lee to run for the House Committee chairmanship. Dennis Kwok will be her non-establishment rival. Chan Kim-paul has secured the backing of his pro-establishment colleagues to seek re-election as chairman of the Finance Committee. He will likely face Kenneth Leung's challenge from the non-establishment side. But it's not all competition.
I personally offer I would serve 2 years, and I would leave the other 2 years to the candidate from the Pan-Democratic camp in the Judicial and Legal Affairs Committee. And I hope that more committees would adopt the same way.
There's a prerequisite, though. Leung said the non-establishment side must not overturn the agreement and play the game in their own way. She was referring to the Pan-Democrats who adopted surprise tactics to grab both chairman and vice chairman seats on the Public Works Subcommittee and the Establishment Subcommittee in 2014. The pro-establishment camp paid back in kind and ended up occupying the chairs of most other subcommittees a year later. Today, the non-establishment side has reached out its olive branch too.
And we try to propose that we can take turns to chair all the committee. Include the House Committee, Finance Committee, and all the panels, so that we will not divide ourselves and to be a strong body to monitor the government.
James Toll said they will meet the pro-establishment lawmakers within this week to see how they may coordinate on who to head which panel committee. Adam Xu, TVB News.
2 suspects shot by the police during a fight in Yamate yesterday remain in hospital. Authorities are still searching for 4 other suspects, and it's believed that the police have already identified 2 of them. More than 100 police officers combed through Temple Street, Shanghai Street, Park Street, and Wusong Street early this morning looking for the suspects. Their search included massage parlors, bars, and entertainment facilities in the district. The officers also checked out a number of arcades, bringing away 2 men of South Asian descent who failed to produce an identity card. All this comes after a group of people were seen attacking a man at the junction of Nanking Street and Park Street yesterday. Police officers arrived at the scene and tried to break up the fight. The officers fired 4 shots after the attackers ignored their verbal warnings. 2 Nepalese men were hit. One of them tried to flee in a taxi before being subdued by an officer. The pair remain in hospital. One of them, who suffered gunshot wounds to his waist and feet, remains in critical condition. The other one, who was shot in the hand, is in stable condition. Police sources say the 2 officers who fired the shots and the female officer who subdued one of the suspects have already submitted written statements on the incident. At least 4 of the suspects in yesterday's attack are of Nepalese descent. A district councillor says he has seen fights break out among the Nepalese who live in the area before, but no people were seriously injured. But Chris Ip did point out that the number of such fights has been on the rise. He says scuffles tend to happen after people have been drinking. This, Ip said, has other residents worried about their safety. Concerned group, the Southern Democratic Alliance, says there are around 15,000 Nepalese living in the Yaochimong district. It insisted only a small number would act unlawfully. These are usually those who have a drug or gambling problem and have been kicked out of their homes.
British Chancellor Philip Hammond admitted today Britain faced a period of uncertainty and turbulence as it prepares to exit the European Union in a few years' time. Prime Minister Theresa May announced yesterday the UK would begin the Brexit process by the end of March at the latest. Tony Sabine reports.
Ever since Britain voted at the end of June to leave the European Union, the British government has been under pressure to produce a timetable for Brexit sooner rather than later. At her Conservative Party conference yesterday, Prime Minister Theresa May announced the UK was ready to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, giving it 2 years to leave the EU.
Let me be absolutely clear. There will be no unnecessary delays in invoking Article 50. We will invoke it when we are ready, and we will be ready soon. We will invoke Article 50 no later than the end of March next year.
May went on to paint an optimistic picture of Britain's future, but today other ministers warned the UK's departure from Europe would be complicated and marked by uncertainty. Chancellor of the Exchequer Philip Hammond said it was vital for the government to maintain a steady hand and do everything to support the economy while Britain made the transition. Outside the conference, there were plenty of views for and against Brexit.
If and when we exit from the European Union, our lawmakers won't be bound by those directives, and the courts would no longer be bound to interpret UK law. So really, the standards that we have for women workers' rights, or pregnant workers' rights, would be just down to the view of Parliament at the time, and there wouldn't be the security that we've had for so many decades.
EU rules in relation to people coming from the EU stop us from protecting our security, both in relation to preventative checks at the border when people try to come in, but also, for example, if someone commits a criminal offence, our hands have been tied in deporting them home.
May's bold announcement on Article 50 has led many to believe Britain is heading for a so-called hard Brexit, in which the UK abandons the EU's customs union, gives up on seeking preferential access to the single market, and imposes controls on immigration from the bloc. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Donald Trump's tax avoidance became a flashpoint in the U.S. election campaign yesterday. The New York Times reported Saturday that the Republican presidential nominee reported a $916 million loss in 1995, and that may have allowed him to avoid paying federal income taxes for up to 18 years. Alan Booknier reports.
The tax benefits, outlined in documents obtained by the New York Times, stemmed from financial deals Trump made in the early 1990s that went bad. Speaking on U.S. television, former New York mayor and Trump supporter Rudy Giuliani described the tax dodge as genius.
This is a perfectly legal application of the tax code, and he would have been a fool not to take advantage of it. Not only that, he would have probably breached his fiduciary duty to his investors, to his business. You have an obligation when you run a business to maximize the profits.
Yeah, well, if everybody in this country was a genius, we wouldn't, like Mr. Trump is, and not pay any taxes. We would not have a country. I think it's outrageous, and I think it speaks to one of the issues that Secretary Clinton is talking about, I have talked about. We have massive income and wealth inequality in this country today. Rich are getting richer, almost everybody else is getting poorer.
Trump tweeted on his account yesterday that he knows tax laws better than anyone who's ever run for president, and said he's the only one who can fix them. Meanwhile, Trump's new luxury hotel in Washington, which opened less than a month ago, was vandalized with graffiti that read "Black Lives Matter" and "No Justice, No Peace." Supporters from both camps expressed disapproval.
I don't like it. Although Trump has done some bad things, I still don't think they should have graffitied it, and I am a Trump supporter.
I don't think that's the manner that things should be done. You know, if you have an opposition to something, then don't destroy property, peaceful things, not damaging things.
The hotel is a renovated historic old post office building. Alan Booknier, TVB News.
Colombians narrowly rejected a peace deal with Marxist rebels yesterday. The surprise victory for the no camp pours cold water on a deal that was hailed internationally for ending the 52-year-old war. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos said a ceasefire already negotiated would remain in place. He said he'll meet the leaders of the no camp to discuss the way forward and send his chief negotiator back to Cuba to speak with FARC rebel leaders. In Havana, where the negotiations have taken place for 4 years, the rebel leaders, known as Timochenko, echoed that the ceasefire remains in place. Opponents to the pact believe it's too lenient on the rebels.
A mixed result for the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who was looking for a convincing result in a referendum on the European Union's migrant quotas. Almost all Hungarians who voted in Sunday's referendum rejected the EU's migrant quotas. But the turnout stood at 43.9%, short of the 50% plus one vote needed for the referendum to be valid. Still, Hungary's right-wing leader said EU policymakers should heed the outstanding referendum outcome. Hungary has opposed a policy that would require all EU countries to take in some of the hundreds of thousands of people seeking asylum in the bloc after arriving last year. Still to come tonight in our broadcast, a Japanese researcher wins this year's Nobel Prize for medicine or physiology. The Philippine president apologizes to the Jewish community for recent remarks. And a protest march by Chamchoipo fabric vendors over a government relocation plan.
Bear braves the freezing Arctic cold of Scotland and gets friendly with reindeer on the way to climbing the highest mountain in the UK.
This is horrible.
Tonight, Britain's biggest adventures with Bear Grylls. The last episode at 9:35 on Pearl. The swamp is a scary place for most animals. But alligators that survive their first year get to serve as apex predators, carrying out a collective 2 million ambush kills each week. Tuesday, Wild Florida at 9:35 on Pearl Spectacular.
Là-bas mon bala, là-bas mon
DPM sensor accurately detects your body pressure distribution, giving you a fully customized point-to-point mattress. Revolutionizing sleep.
DPM, more than sleep.
Whatever your reason for flying to Europe, make all your business meetings a success. Tell your loved ones how much you love them from the other side of the world. Fly to Europe with Aeroflot and enjoy the outstanding onboard service. Aeroflot, crossing Eurasia.
There are times when we just can't help ourselves. Hong Kong Tennis Open 2016. Highlights next Monday to Thursday night after the news roundup. And live from Friday to Sunday at these times on Pearl.
And welcome back. Japanese researcher Yoshinori Osumi has won the 2016 Nobel Prize for Medicine of Physiology. He was awarded the prize for his groundbreaking work in the 1990s, showing how the body breaks down and recycles cellular components. The Karolinska Institute said his discoveries help understand how cells function in a range of illnesses, from Parkinson's disease to cancer. The prize for medicine is the first of the Nobel Prizes awarded each year.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has apologized to Jews worldwide. This after his recent remarks drawing comparisons between his anti-drug war and Hitler and the Holocaust sparked shock and outrage.
I would like to make it now, here and now, that there was never an intention on my part to derogate the memory of the 6 million Jews murdered by the Germans. So I apologize profoundly and deeply to the Jewish country.
Duterte made the apology during a speech last night at a festival in the central Philippines. He said his references to the Holocaust were to hit back at critics who had likened him to Adolf Hitler, as he wanted to show how his opponents had sought to portray him.
Fabric traders in Sham Shui Po staged a protest march today over the government's relocation plan. These vendors based in the Yanqiao Street Fabric Market marched to the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department's office in their district this morning. They claimed the government unilaterally decided to move them to a temporary market nearby, with rent much higher than their current one. A representative also urged the authorities to acknowledge 17 unlicensed hawkers who have been in business in the fabric market for decades. Otherwise, all 50 vendors will refuse to vacate the site, which would be used for housing development.
A Circle K convenience store at Wafu Estate has been fined $3,500 after more than 200 ants were found in a hot dog sold by the store. The store first received a customer complaint in January. Upon inspection, 208 ants were found in the hot dog. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department subsequently slapped the store with a summons for selling food not of the quality demanded by the purchaser. A Circle K representative in mitigation told the Eastern Magistracy the store had since strengthened its hygiene measures. This is the 7th time the convenience store chain has been convicted of similar charges.
In Apple Daily's latest legal battle, the newspaper allegedly published a billionaire's medical records without his consent. The paper's former chief editor, Chen Kim-hong, attended the hearing at Kwun Tong Magistracy this morning. He, together with Apple Daily Limited and Apple Daily Printing Limited, pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of disclosure of personal data obtained without consent from data users. They allegedly printed tycoon Joseph Lau's medical report without his knowledge in 2013. At the time, Lau was the executive director, chairman, and CEO of Chinese Estates Holdings, a locally listed company. The court heard that the property developer had diabetes, heart disease, requires up to 4 dialysis a week, and may lose consciousness when under pressure. The hearing has been adjourned until Wednesday. Local football club Kitchi is looking for ways to further engage with their government to keep its training ground in Sha Tin. The land has been earmarked for public housing. Elmi Long reports.
The government intends to redevelop this plot in Shak Mun for public housing. And that worries Kitchi players and management, who see the facility as a breeding ground for young talent.
This center is very important. Around 600, 700 kids every day come here to make his dream come true.
This parcel of land was released to Kitchi on a short-term tenancy agreement. Still, the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charities Trust and Kitchi invested more than $80 million to construct the training centre on the belief the lease would be renewed. Kitchi released a statement today and said the future development of Hong Kong football will undoubtedly suffer a huge setback if the site is taken back. In an unofficial consultation with district councillors, the government had mentioned a 2-phase development plan to build 1,400 public units in the area. Tonight, the chief executive thanked Kitchi for helping promote the sport in Hong Kong. He added the club can continue to stay where they are until they can find another home. Elmi Long, TVB News.
So, Chris, what's happening in sports?
Well, we've got a little bit of back at you from the U.S. The United States regained the Ryder Cup on home soil, that is, after 3 consecutive losses to the Europeans. Some fierce one-on-one matches highlighted the final day of competition. Here's Jameson Wong.
Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy traded punches early at Hazeltine in Minnesota. And the opening singles match went the distance. Reed holed the putt on 18 to clinch the match and take the Americans closer to their first Ryder Cup victory since 2008. Phil Mickelson earned half a point against Spain's Sergio Garcia, lefty with the clutch putt on 18, the celebration reminiscent to the one after his first Masters win. Ryan Moore wrapped it up for the host, beating Lee Westwood. The final score, 17-11.
It was awesome. They put me out there to go do my job. Let's get red on the board early. And to be able to go out and play the way I did and do our job and get the cup back, it's awesome.
The next Ryder Cup will be played in 2018 at Le Golf National near Paris. The Americans last won the Ryder Cup on European soil in 1993. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
Formula One and Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo won the Malaysian Grand Prix, breaking Mercedes' juggernaut run. Problems for pole sitter Lewis Hamilton at Sepang. He was leading with 15 laps to go when his engine caught fire. The defending drivers' champion was forced to retire. Ricciardo's Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen was second, followed by Nico Rosberg. Rosberg leads Hamilton by 23 points with 5 races left. The two men have won all but 2 races this season. Bundesliga now, and Bayern Munich and Cologne played to a 1-1 draw. Anthony Modeste cancelled out the opening goal from Joshua Kimmich. The German Giants dropped 4 points. That is, dropped points for the first time this season. However, they still top the table with 16 points from 6 games. Elsewhere, Bayer Leverkusen beat Borussia Dortmund 2-0. Chicharito scored his 4th goal in 2 games. Berlin also defeated Hamburg 2-0. Now to baseball, and the San Francisco Giants defeated the Los Angeles Dodgers on the final day of the regular season. The 7-1 win was a big one as the Giants secured the 2nd National League wildcard spot for the playoffs. And the game also marked Vin Scully's farewell. The Dodgers announcer spent his last day in the broadcast booth, ending his 67-year career. The Giants will play the New York Mets, with the winner advancing to the division series.
And that's the news.
Good night.
getting images of these spheres from all over the world.
Why have you come to our planet?
Your planet.
I need to know what's happening.
If the human race dies, the Earth survives.
We can change.
A decision is made.
You could stop this if you wanted to.
The process has begun.
Saturday night, the day the Earth stood still, on Pearl's weekend blockbuster.
There are things in life which people just love. Special moments and memories that they only entrust to one. We want to protect special possessions, recipes to be perfect, and food to be always fresh. For everything you really love, that's Mila. That's Immer Besser.
EOS 5D Mark IV 4K 同步攝錄、攝影，配合雙像素 CMOS AF 極速追焦，利用 Frame Grab 功能，將任何一格變成最精彩嘅相片。Canon, delighting you always.
Why has Hong Kong become so politically divided 19 years after its reunification with China? Holden Chow on Straight Talk, Tuesday night at 8 on Pearl. Get up close and personal with Lisa S. and other influential women. Join in on one of the largest obstacle races in Hong Kong. Modern German and Italian furniture, peculiar Spanish tapas, plus beautiful wedding bouquets. Thursday night, Dolce Vita at 9 on Pearl.
Good evening. The weather was mainly cloudy with sunny intervals and a few showers. As tonight's situation chart shows, the area of low pressure over the seas south of Hong Kong is bringing unsettled weather to the coast of Guangdong. Up to 5 p.m., temperatures ranged from 26.6 to 28.3 degrees, and the relative humidity was between 77 and 85%. Light to moderate east to northeasterly winds, occasionally fresh offshore and on high ground. 0.2 millimeters of rainfall has been recorded since midnight. The current temperature is now 28 degrees Celsius, with the relative humidity standing at 82%. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow?
Oh.
It will be mainly cloudy with a few showers and isolated thunderstorms.